I was so struck at various points during the book, Sharon, about when you talk about the things that you have lost out on through cheating. So when I come to introduce you for our programme to this piece, I will describe you as having won a silver medal. I'll talk about your European Championships medal. But what could I have said about you if you had fair play yourself?
Oh, that's a great question. You could have called me the youngest European medalist at 14, probably, champion. Olympic double gold medalist, because obviously they took my second event out as well. It's the only time it's been removed. It's been in every single one since then, so I didn't get to swim that, which was really frustrating. And obviously, kind of all that era, of racing the East Germans. But I've always really passionately felt that there was two victims: myself and my teammates that lost out on the medals we should have had, and all the opportunities, particularly my friends that didn't get on the podium at all. But those young girls that the East Germans let down, many of them are incredibly ill now. Some of them have even died, and it's that dereliction to duty that the IOC had and did, and just for 20 years they ignored it, and then for the 40 years afterwards they've not acknowledged it, and they're not learning from these terrible lessons.
So one of the things that will strike anybody who looks back over your career is the fact that what happened to you happened in plain sight for all of us as viewers as well. So Jane and I were discussing this the other day. We were talking about the fact that when we watched the 1976 Olympics, there were jokes in the classroom about the East German team. So when you were actually there, can you remember what was being said to you at the time about, apart from anything else, the difference in their appearance?
But everybody knew, everybody around the side of the pool knew exactly what was going on. What we didn't know was what drugs. I mean, we presumed it was testosterone of some sort, but it was Turinabol. So, when they were giving it to these young girls, what was their process? How long did it take before they could get it out of their system so that they could come to the Olympics and not be tested positive? So it was all of the how rather than are they, because it was so obvious that they were. They would come to an Olympics and we'd never seen these people before. They would appear and break world records, and they've not done a junior program or any previous internationals of any sort. They looked and sounded like men. They had Adam's apples and thick throats and shadows and poor bad skin, and they genuinely looked very sad and not terribly happy, and they were always kept separate from us. I mean, during the 76 Olympic Games, the East German team was kept on a boat in the middle of the St. Lawrence River. And then after the games were over, they raked up a load of syringes and tubes and bottles and substances, and still nothing was done. There's opportunity after opportunity. There were people that defected with the little blue pills. There was doctors that reported what was going on. It was continual that the IOC did absolutely nothing. They were very complicit in what happened. And they even gave awards to East German doctors and East German coaches, which only until recently were removed.
So can you give us a potted history of the IOC with regards to women's sport? That's your competitive task for
they
today,
get a big fat
Sharon.
zero. They just did everything in their power from the word go. So even Pierre de Coubertin, who's supposed to be the father of the Olympic Games, did everything possible to keep women out of the Olympics. So I would rather he wasn't celebrated next year in Paris. And then just how difficult it was to get women into lots of sports, whether that's rowing, boxing, being able to run the marathon, not to 1984, people being dragged off the Boston Marathon. I mean, the book, obviously, people think the book is all about the trans argument, and obviously that's in there, but it's more about the battles that women have had in sport throughout the whole of the modern history era, and the fact that we've had so many hurdles. I mean, the interesting statistics are things like in the UK at the moment, there's 1,000 women that earn their living from sport. There's 11,000 men. In America, because they have better ways of keeping stats than we do, but we're very similar, 1% of the sponsorship dollar goes to women in sport. 4% of the airtime goes to women. The rest goes to men. So we already have this very tiny piece of the cake. And now we're supposed to be moving over in our own category for males who say that they feel like female. However, they are still males. Whatever they feel like, they are still males. And this would never be tolerated in men's sport. So it's this constant knocking of women's sport, this constant battle just to kind of get some form of equality, even if it's just the opportunity to have the same races or the same number of people, which now we've achieved at the Olympic Games, but it's taken until now literally to do that. And when I competed in 1980, there were 4 times as many men as there were women. But we still have massive problems with committees and the people that run sport. And I think that's part of the recent problem, is that, misogynistic sports like cricket and cycling have been an absolute nightmare to just give a voice to female athletes.
Can we talk a bit more about the trans issue then? Is it fair, Sharron, to say that these are people who feel a different sex to the gender that they were assigned at birth? Is that...
Well, they're not assigned. I take offence to the word assigned, okay, because we are our sex. So we're not assigned. It's not someone goes, let me just pick a birth and decide I'm going to make you pink and I'm going to make you blue. We are either male or female. That is a biological reality, and that can be distinguished extremely early on, even in someone that's carrying a child. So this isn't about just visually looking at somebody. What I have a problem with is, how does feeling like something you're not trump the reality of half the world who are something? And when we know that there's a very different physical ability in sport, i.e. anything between 10 and 30% at the Olympic Games. So 10% being things like middle distance running, 30% being something like weightlifting. And the more explosive an event is, the bigger the advantage. And we have every piece of science that says we can't remove that puberty or that male advantage. Then basically we've just said to women, you're no longer worthy of fair sport. So what we offer men, we're not offering women. You have to go into a race with a known disadvantage. And that's what I have a big problem with, the fact that for PC virtual signaling, women's sport was so easily kicked to the curb again, when the IOC could have said, well, let's do the science first, and if the science proves that we can remove advantage, then we'll think about what we can do.
And
but
there is a lot. There is a lot in your book about the science of testosterone. So can we just talk about that? Is it true that even if you reduce the testosterone in a person, you would never be able to take away elements gained through being born male, through that innate masculinity? Is that just not possible?
It's not possible. So all of our studies so far, and there are 19 studies, the last being September of last year, one of the largest after the longest amount of time, which is 14 years of reducing testosterone. The reduction in the advantage was tiny. So, that's after 14 years. So things like Q angle, which is the angle between your hips and your knees, which is obviously bigger for women because we have childbearing hips, that's the whole point, means that footballers, for example, have 6 times as many knee injuries, female footballers, because we have this larger Q angle and because we have ligaments which are much more flexible. So therefore they're not as strong and they're not as supportive. So, there are, those things cannot be altered by reducing testosterone. We have 50 trans-identifying males at the moment in the English FA, and the vast majority of those are goalkeepers, because it's a big advantage to having larger hands and being more dynamic to be able to stop the ball. So, in rugby, we know that it increases the risk of injury, serious injury, by about 30%. And it will be women that will pay the price, on contact sports. And
so one of sure. So sorry. This will happen because we're doing this on Zoom, Sharron. I apologise for that. Reducing testosterone in an athlete has been touted previously as one way that you might be able to level the playing field. So you're saying that the science doesn't back that?
No, not a single study supports that.
So
all these ideas that it was 10 nanomoles, then it was 5 nanomoles, then it was 2.5 nanomoles, then it was 5 years, then it was 1 year, then it was none of it. It was all just plucked out of the sky. There was not a single piece of scientific evidence to base that on.
Can I also ask you about the gap closing theory, this notion that the more we advance in science, in terms of nutrition, in terms of training, the easier it is to bring male and female athletes together, that the strongest woman might be able to compete with the weakest.
Honestly, I cannot believe you're asking me that question with a smile on your face. You're literally saying that women don't train hard enough. Is that what you're telling me?
No, I am asking you all of the things that that you have been challenged about before, all of the main planks that are actually holding up this kind of structure of debate at the moment.
Absolutely. So 40 years ago when I was swimming, All right, we've had 40 years to carry on. I was doing 6 hours a day, which is what most people are doing today in swimming, somewhere between 4 and 6 hours a day. When I was 11, I fell out of a tree and broke both my arms. My dad wrapped my arms in plastic bags, and I trained for 3 months with my arms in plaster. The following year, I tore the ligaments in my knee. He tied my legs together, and I pulled for 3 months. Now, I can tell you, with my hand on my heart, there was nobody that trained harder in those training sessions than I did, whether you're a male or female. However, my body does not enable me to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, because I don't produce the testosterone and I don't have the framework. And it's a very insulting thing to say that female athletes don't train hard enough, and with given more time, they will close the gap. Actually, we can prove scientifically that's not true. So the gap has stayed the same pretty much for the last 40, 50 years. The only thing that has actually helped is the access. So when women, when Title IX, for example, in the 70s came in America, the access for women to have better opportunities and better sponsorship enabled more women and more depth to have access to sport. But the performance difference has practically not changed at all for decades and decades.
Sorry, Jane, you go.
No, Sharron, can I just ask a quick question about the IOC? I mean, why would they be fundamentally against women's sport?
I just don't know, but they always have been. Historically, they always have been. And the decision they made in 2015 was a decision which literally said, we're going to put a feeling in front of all the evidence that we have, all of the women that do our sport, all the idea of offering equality, and we're just going to throw women's sport under the bus. And what we've been doing since then, that the past 7-8 years now, we've been clawing it back, just trying to say, right, please poll your athletes, please speak to the women, please speak to the scientists, please use the science that we have. And now you can see the governing bodies changing their policies.
But so the IOC, there's nothing democratic about the IOC, is there, at all?
No,
I mean, as I understand it, is the Princess Royal still Britain's representative?
Not. I wish she was. She hasn't been our representative for a very long time. In fact, the only females that sit on that committee come from the Middle East and North Korea, the bastion of women's sport, North Korea and the Middle East. and that's the problem we have, right? We don't have strong women and not allowed to sit on those committees who have a voice, who stand up for women. So we have a battle, and we are fighting constantly, and things seem to get better, and then something like this happens, and then we're on our back foot and we're fighting again. But I mean, we are getting there at last with World Aquatics, as I said, track and field, world cycling at long last, obviously world rugby, world boxing. I mean, the fantastic and interesting, stat about world boxing is that world boxing have said we will not allow cross-sex fighting. And you know why? Because their men said, we will not fight women because we will kill somebody, and then we were done for manslaughter. So it wasn't the protecting the women, it was the men saying, we don't want to end up going to prison. I mean, you couldn't write this stuff sometimes, when we've made such great strides. But like I said, having said that, we still have a very small piece of the cake, and we still got an awful lot of work to do. And we look at the football at the moment and it's on television, but the moment a major tournament like the Europeans or the Worlds are over, then it's a struggle to see it again.
How much support have you felt you've had from male athletes during your campaign? I know Daley Thompson has been very vocal in his support, and Lord Coe has come good, I think, quite recently in your eyes. But what about other male colleagues?
Very disappointed, to be honest with you. I think that they keep their heads down because they don't want it to affect their revenue. So I... 2017, 2018, over a weekend, I contacted 60 of my friends in the world of sport. Every single one of those is an Olympic medalist or a world champion, and every single one of those is a household name, and more than half of them were men. Only 5 of that 60 have ever put their head above the parapet. So the support behind the scenes, the private support is massive. And when we get to poll, we can see that. So rowing polled and 80% said we want fair sport. So, but it's getting that opportunity to have a voice that's quite difficult.
And can you tell us just a little bit about the kind of abuse that you have faced?
Just activists ringing every single job that I have, ringing every single charity, ringing my children's schools, abusing my kids, calling me every name under the sun. What am I? I'm a bigot. I'm a homophobe. What else? Obviously a transphobe. Oh, I'm even a racist, which I find hilarious because I've got mixed race kids. So they use these terms not to actually to mean it. They use it to bully. They use it to shut you up and to stop you trying to debate and present the science.
So why do you think it is, Sharron, that people cannot see the misogyny in the targeting of people like you?
I don't know why. I honestly don't know why. I mean, you mentioned Daly. Daly gets 100th of the abuse that I get, and yet he has exactly the same views and says the same things.
It's almost as though, I mean, people like you...
Movement. It really does. It feels like it's a totally and utterly a men's rights movement. And the historically, women, we get hit over the head with this "be kind" slogan. And yet if you turned around to men and said, oh, let's be kind to Lance Armstrong, he was only cheating a little bit, it's not going to matter. He's only got a 1% advantage on us. Let him carry on. I mean, they just laugh in your face.
But it's almost, let's be honest, your side of the argument, and by the way, it may very well be the side of the argument that Fee and I are on as well, has somehow become unfashionable. We are older women saying apparently unfashionable things. And indeed, I've had spirited conversations with my own children, who happen to be female, about what we have faced and what we've lived through and why so many of us get so passionate about this. Now, they don't really see it, do they, in my experience?
I think part of that is age. I mean, my own mum, I remember her telling me that when she bought her first house with my dad, that the money for the deposit came from my granddad, because my mum lost her mum very young. So my granddad gave her the money to buy a house with my dad. Now, my mum's name wasn't even allowed to be on the mortgage, on her own house with all the money that she put down. And I think part of it is the younger generation today just don't see the misogyny and the battle that previous generations have had to get opportunities, to get equality, to be able to have our own bank accounts and own our own houses and have a voice. I just don't think they realise what they're giving away. But I've got a 16-year-old, and I do think that there is a change. That there's a younger generation that are seeing through this as well. And you say it's not fashionable. I'm not sure that's really true, because I get phone calls all the time from young athletes and young coaches. It's just that they're petrified to come out and to give their opinion.
Yeah.
Do you genuinely, though, see a trans athlete in what you would say is the wrong category as always being a cheat, though? Is that a conflation of two different things? That's about deliberate intent. Maybe it's wrong to give them that level of kind of, I don't know, illegality, menace, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? It is difficult, because I believe that if you have a known advantage like that, that is knowing that you are cheating. That's the same as someone who's taking testosterone, knows that testosterone has given them advantage, and going into that race, just like Lance Armstrong, and that's cheating. So, and you can't tell me that Leah Thomas, who was Will Thomas and competed for many years at his university, did not know that he had an advantage when he went into those races. So I will always come on down on the side that it's ignorant to pretend that people that are supposed to understand sport don't know that the reason we have a male and female category is because we're biologically different. Otherwise, why would we have that? Why would we bother having men and women's sport if there was no difference?
And this is such an interesting time to be talking, isn't it? And recently, Casta Semenya has won a case with the European Court of Human Rights, which has said that she was discriminated against within sport because of being asked to reduce her testosterone levels. And I wonder what you think about that kind of interface between sport and the legal world, because those kind of challenges will continue to be made, won't they?
Yes, unless we come up with a better framework.
Yeah.
Unless we come up with a better framework, which I would very much like to do. That's where I am pushing, the resolution, shall I say, the answer. So I believe we should bring back sex screening, which is a cotton wool swab to the inside of your cheek, and it takes 10 seconds, and you have one in your life because humans can't change your sex. I had one way back in 1976. The IOC got rid of it in around the 2000s. They polled their female athletes. 98% said they wanted to keep it. 2% said they found it uncomfortable. Now, if you find having a cheek swab uncomfortable, you shouldn't be in elite sport, because elite sport athletes have to have WADA doing your drug test, standing over you whilst you have a pee, right? So, you know, a cheek swab is nothing in comparison to that. And they decided on that grounds, even though all those women said they wanted to keep it, to get rid of it. If we brought it back, it would sort the problem out instantly. We just go, this category here is for females, and we will be sex screening. A DSD, Caster Semenya's DSD, is 46 XY 5ARD. That particular DSD, differences of sexual development, only affects males. The first 3 athletes in the 800 metres in the women's race in Rio were all males. The first female came fourth and didn't get on the podium.
We are almost out of time.
And a lot of people don't know that, because a lot of the media don't report that.
Yeah. Can I just ask you as a final question how optimistic you are about the future? Because a lot of things, as you've said, a lot of governing bodies in sport have changed their regulations over the last couple of years, haven't they?
Yes, they have. And I think that the UK has been leading that. You know, we've got triathlon, which at the moment World Triathlon hasn't chosen to protect the female category. Hopefully they will. Volleyball, badminton, rugby, obviously swimming, athletics, cycling, and we're hoping that world rowing as well will change, but British rowing has changed. So, you know, it's just trying to get debate and trying to get the governing bodies to use the science, and then trying to get them to be brave enough to do their job, which is to protect all athletes, not just minorities. You know, we have to find room for everyone to do sport. I categorically 100% believe that. I've spent my whole life trying to get people to do sport. I know it's really important for our physical and mental health. So I don't want anyone to be excluded. But there's an awful lot of propaganda when the word banned is used, because no one is actually banned. They're only banned from a category they don't qualify for. A 15-year-old is not banned from the under 12s. They don't qualify for that category. So, you know, a heavyweight is not banned from the bantamweight. That's because they don't qualify for that category. So it's about competing where it's fair, and understanding that 50% of this world, biological females, deserve and are worthy of fair sport.
But as it stands, you don't believe, Sharron, that the Olympics next year will be entirely fair?
In some sports, I think we probably will be struggling. But in the vast majority of sports, particularly the bigger sports, I think it will be fair.